And this is the argument with trophy hunting, right? Which is a different kind of hunting than we're talking about. This sort of food hunting, but
right. And we should talk about that though, because I think that is what generates the hostility towards hunting, is because a lot of people jump to this imagery of these people with, they killed a tiger or they killed an elephant or they killed something, and that obviously, I think people get very emotional about that, and so we have to understand, right? There are penalties, very significant penalties. For that kind of hunting, right? And how big of a problem is that? And then we can segue into this aspect too.
Yeah. I mean, so in the United States, like statistically, as long as people have been asking this question, do you support people's right to hunt animals for food? Basically, support is overwhelmingly high. It's like 78, 80%, something like that. So it's there's certainly a segment of the population who does find this problematic, but overall,
those are largely people that are opposed to eating animals at all.
Maybe. I mean, there's also many vegans, let's say, who support hunting, like they think that hunting is ethically okay as a source of meat as opposed to factory farming. Right. As I've sort of gotten into these communities and sort of reporting these stories, I've come to learn that vegans and hunters have a lot more in common than you might expect. At least some sections of those communities. But when it comes to trophy hunting, obviously that's a very different situation. And there are cases where those things overlap, right? You might want to go out for your trophy buck with a great rack, a great set of antlers,
right?
But you're still going to eat that deer, right?
Nobody eats the tiger that they kill, right?
Well. It depends. So I reported a story a couple years ago now for Biographic about what might be, first of all, the world's most expensive trophy hunt, and perhaps one of the most sort of sustainable, ethical ones. And it's for this animal. It's for this mountain goat in the hills of Tajikistan, the mountains of Tajikistan that like no one's ever heard of. It's called a markhor. It's a really cool mountain goat, really cool twirly horns. Like $120,000 US.
Oh wow!
To go and kill one of these things, and people will eat that
because of the numbers.
It's endangered. By the late 1990s, there were like 350 of these things in the wild. Now those numbers have increased, and in part that's because some of the communities there, which had poached these animals out for food. Were convinced to stop poaching if that meant that they could then sell trophy hunts to wealthy foreigners. Right.
Because there's much more money in that.
Right. Yeah. So wealthy foreigner comes in, pays all kinds of money to be able to do this, and that person takes home like the skin and the horns and whatever. But the meat, the hunter and his guides will eat that night, but the rest of the animal will go and be distributed among the communities that live in this area. So this is a case where the animal that was trophy hunted does get consumed, right? It is an important source of food, but that's obviously not the main motivation for the hunt. Right.
It's just the rarity, just the trophy itself.
Right. And in this case, in Tajikistan where I was, it varies year by year, but I think the year I was there, there were seven licenses that were given out that year for legal hunts of these markhor.
Okay, so that's almost $1 million.
Yeah, and this is a case where, yes, like this amount of money, this part of the world, like there's just going to be some corruption. There just will be.
Yeah,
it's almost part of the cost of doing business. But there's also measurable conservation outcomes. There are more markhor today after several years of legalized hunting than there were 10 years ago.
And the numbers are not dropping in an alarming way. They're increasing.
They're increasing. Okay.